The world has a way of forgetting those who once belonged. And in the small suburban neighborhood of Willow Creek, a dog named Max learned that truth far too early in life. Max was a golden retriever, his fur once shining like sunlight and his eyes filled with innocent trust. He had been adopted as a puppy by the Harris family, a middle-class household that, for a brief time, treated him like he was part of their world. The children laughed as he chased tennis balls across the yard, and Mrs. Harris often patted his head while humming in the kitchen. For Max, those early days felt like eternity. Love, warmth, and belonging, everything a dog could ask for. But life doesn't stay the same. As the years passed, the children grew older. They stopped throwing tennis balls and started staring at glowing screens. Mrs. Harris became busier with work, and Mr. Harris, always tired, complained about fur on the couch. Max, once the center of their laughter, slowly became a shadow in their lives. His food bowl was filled later and later each evening, his walks became rare, and soon, he was spending long, lonely hours in the backyard, watching the world without him. Then came the day that changed everything. The Harrises were moving. A new city, a smaller apartment, a fresh start, without Max. He overheard their voices as they packed boxes. "It's just not practical anymore," Mr. Harris said firmly. "We'll find someone to take him," Mrs. Harris muttered, her voice guilty but resigned. But no one came. On the morning of their departure, Max wagged his tail eagerly, thinking maybe this was an adventure. He trotted toward the car as the family loaded the last of their belongings. But instead of opening the door for him, Mr. Harris knelt, gave him one quick pat on the head and whispered, "Sorry, boy." Then the car drove away. Max ran. He chased the sound of the engine until his legs trembled. He barked, louder and louder, as if his cries could pierce their hearts and make them turn back. But the car became smaller and smaller until it was gone. The street was quiet. The silence that followed felt like a knife. Days turned into nights. Max waited by the gate, ears twitching at every sound, eyes burning from hope that refused to die. But no familiar footsteps returned. Hunger clawed at his belly, and thirst cracked his tongue. Neighbors passed by, some tossing scraps of bread, others shooing him away. No one offered shelter. He became the dog everyone pitied, but no one claimed. His golden fur grew dusty, his once bright eyes dulled, and his ribs began to show. He slept under porches, shivered through the cold, and flinched at thunder when there was no one to comfort him. But worst of all was not the hunger or the cold. It was the loneliness. Max couldn't understand why love had an end date. Why a family could decide one day that he was no longer worth keeping. Dogs don't know betrayal the way humans do. They only know loyalty. And Max's loyalty, unbroken, kept him waiting long after logic should have told him to move on. One evening, after weeks of wandering, Max found himself at the edge of a park. The sunset cast long shadows, painting the world in fading gold. Families gathered there, children running, parents laughing, dogs leaping after frisbees. For a moment, his tail wagged instinctively. He thought of his own family, of how he once belonged to scenes like this. But when he stepped closer, a mother pulled her child away. "Don't touch him," she warned. "He's dirty." The child's small eyes looked at Max with a mix of fear and sadness. And Max, ashamed though he didn't know why, lowered his head and walked away. That night, rain poured hard, soaking his fur until it clung to his thin body. Max huddled beneath an abandoned bus stop, his teeth chattering. Thunder rolled across the sky, each crash making him shiver. In the reflection of a puddle, he saw himself, muddy, weak, forgotten. The golden retriever, who once lived in warmth, had become a stray nobody wanted. Yet somewhere deep inside, a spark refused to die. A faint flicker of hope, born from the memory of hands that once patted him, of voices that once called his name. Perhaps, he thought in the wordless way dogs think, perhaps there was still someone out there who would see him. Someone who would care. That fragile hope carried him into the next day. And though he didn't know it, Fate had already set in motion a chain of events that would turn this forgotten stray into something the world had never seen before. But on that night, Max was just a dog left behind, curled in the cold, dreaming of a home that no longer existed. The stone hit him before he even saw it coming. Max yelped as the pebble bounced off his side. A group of boys stood at the corner of the alley, laughing as they picked up more rocks. "Get out of here, Mutt," one shouted, his voice sharp with cruelty. Another whistled mockingly. "Look at him, skinny as a stick. Bet he couldn't even bark right." Max staggered back, ribs aching. His ears folded flat against his skull, and his tail tucked tight. Instinct told him to run, but his body hesitated. Hunger kept him rooted to the spot. Behind the boys, he could see a trash bin overflowing with leftovers. The scent of fried chicken skin and stale bread filled his nose, so powerful it almost drowned out his fear. But the boys raised their arms again, and Max darted away before the next volley struck. His paws splashed through puddles, scattering water into the air like shattered glass. Behind him, laughter echoed, cruel and victorious. When the alley grew quiet again, Max crept back. He had no pride left to lose. Nose twitching, he dug through the trash. His teeth closed around a bone slick with grease, and he devoured it as if it were a feast. Yet even as his stomach quieted, shame pressed heavy on him. Once, he had eaten from a shiny silver bowl on a warm kitchen floor. Now, every bite was stolen. But survival left no room for dignity. The days grew harsher. Max roamed the city streets, a ghost no one wanted to see. Shopkeepers shouted at him when he lingered near their doors. Other strays snarled, guarding their scraps with bared teeth. He was too thin to fight, too weary to challenge. His once golden fur had dulled to the color of dirty straw. At night, the city seemed to turn against him. Cold winds bit into his bones. Sirens howled in the distance, mingling with the growl of his empty belly. The world was loud, hostile, and endless. Yet Max did not stop moving. Somewhere deep within him, the spark still burned, weak but alive. It whispered that maybe, just maybe, life could change again. That whisper became a roar the night he heard the cry. It was faint, almost lost beneath the rumble of thunder. A small voice, high and terrified. Max's ears shot up, his head snapping toward the sound. Another cry followed, a child's scream for help. Without thinking, Max ran. His paws pounded against the wet pavement, splashing through gutters as rain lashed the ground. The cry led him toward the river that sliced through the city. There, under the flicker of a broken street lamp, he saw her, a little girl clinging to the edge of the embankment, her small hands slipping on the slick concrete. Her bicycle lay twisted nearby, one wheel still spinning uselessly. The river below churned dark and violent, swollen from the storm. If she fell, she would vanish in seconds. Max froze, chest heaving. Fear clamped around his ribs, like iron.
He was just a stray. Weak. Hungry.
Useless. That was what everyone had told him. He could barely survive his own life. How could he save hers? But the girl's scream sliced through the storm again. Something inside Max snapped. His fear burned away, leaving behind only instinct. The same instinct that once made him chase after tennis balls with boundless energy. The same instinct that once made him guard the harassed children when strangers walked too close. The instinct to protect. With a growl, Max charged forward. His paws skidded on the wet ground, but he pushed harder. He clamped his jaws around the sleeve of the girl's jacket and pulled with all the strength left in his tired body. The rain blurred his vision, but he did not let go. His muscles screamed, his paws dug grooves into the slick concrete, and still he pulled. The girl whimpered, her grip faltering, but Max refused to fail. With one final heave, he dragged her up onto the embankment. She collapsed onto the ground, coughing, her small chest rising and falling in desperate gasps. Max stood over her, panting, his body trembling from exhaustion. For a moment, they just stared at each other, the stray dog and the frightened child. Her wide eyes softened. Slowly, she reached out a small hand and touched his wet fur. You saved me, she whispered, voice fragile as glass. Max's tail gave a weak wag. In her touch, he felt something he had almost forgotten: recognition, value, worth. Moments later, voices called from the distance. Emily. Emily. Flashlights cut through the rain, and two frantic parents rushed toward the girl. They swept her into their arms, tears mixing with rain on their cheeks. Max backed away. This was their reunion, not his. His place was in the shadows. But Emily pointed. Mama, Papa, that dog saved me. The parents turned, eyes falling on the dripping, ragged creature before them. For a heartbeat, the world held still. Max waited for the usual reaction: fear, disgust, dismissal. He lowered his head, bracing for the rejection. But instead, Emily's father knelt. His voice shook with emotion. Thank you, boy, thank you. A gentle hand stroked Max's fur, and in that moment, something changed. For the first time since being abandoned, Max was not invisible. He was not useless. He was a hero. He didn't know it yet, but that single act, born from instinct, fueled by a heart that refused to stop loving, would be the spark that lit the path to a destiny beyond anything he could imagine. The forgotten stray was about to step into a future no one could have predicted. And it began with a single child's touch in the rain. The forgotten dog froze as the door slammed in his face for the last time. It wasn't the first door, nor would it have been the last. Shops, alleys, restaurants, all had chased him away before. But this time, something inside Max shifted. Because tonight, he had nowhere else to go. The storm had returned, lightning cracking the sky open like glass, and the streets flooded with black water. The little girl he saved, Emily, had vanished back into her parents' world of safety and warmth. And Max? He was still outside, shivering. Yet there was a difference now. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't hungry. Emily's father had pressed a small loaf of bread into his hand, breaking it to share with Max before carrying his daughter away. It wasn't much, but it was food given freely, not stolen. It tasted different, like hope. Max curled in the shadow of a bakery's awning, rain dripping on his fur, body trembling against the cold. His eyes shut, but his mind did not rest. He replayed the moment again and again, Emily's hand on his fur, her voice whispering, "You saved me." The words wrapped around him like a blanket. And deep in his chest, a new thought stirred. Maybe he wasn't useless after all. Morning came with broken sunlight piercing through the storm clouds. Max rose, weak but restless, nose twitching at the sense of the waking city. Somewhere nearby, laughter echoed, the same cruel sound he knew too well. He followed. At the corner of a narrow alley, 3 older strays had cornered a pup barely old enough to walk without stumbling. His fur was matted, his ribs sharp against his skin. The larger dogs circled him, teeth bared, their growls vibrating through the ground. The pup yelped, backing against a wall. His tiny body trembled, tail tucked so tightly it disappeared under him. Max's chest tightened. He knew that feeling. The helplessness, the humiliation, the fear that no one would come. He had lived it too many times. The larger strays lunged. Max didn't think, he moved. His body shot forward, muscles surging with adrenaline he didn't know he still had. He barked, a sound so raw and fierce it startled even himself. The bullies snapped their heads toward him, snarling. For a heartbeat, Max faltered. He was thin, weak, and alone. They outnumbered him. His instinct screamed to run. But then he saw the pup's eyes, round, wet, pleading. Eyes that mirrored his own nights of despair. Max growled low, lips curling to reveal sharp teeth. He stood taller than he felt, tail stiff like a flag. He wasn't asking. He was daring them. The biggest stray lunged. Teeth clashed for flew. Max fought like lightning, fast and unpredictable. He didn't have strength, but he had desperation, and desperation makes its own kind of weapon. He bit, twisted, dodged. The fight blurred into sound and motion, growls splitting the air, claws scraping the pavement, the pup's whimpers pressed against the wall. Finally, Max sank his teeth into the leader's ear and held. The bully yelped, shaking violently, but Max didn't release until the other dogs backed off. One by one, they slunk away, hackles raised but courage broken. Silence returned, broken only by the rain dripping from rooftops. Max turned, panting, body aching. The pup stared at him, wide-eyed, trembling. Slowly, Max lowered his head and nudged the pup gently with his nose. The little one blinked, then followed him. Step by shaky step, he walked in Max's shadow. And for the first time since his fall from grace, Max wasn't just surviving. He was leading. Word of the rescue spread, not among humans yet, but in the language of dogs. Whispers moved through alleys, over fences, across parks. The forgotten mutt, the useless stray, had fought for another. He had stood his ground. He had won. But fate wasn't done with him. 2 nights later, Max's path crossed with Emily again. He had been resting under a broken cart when he heard the squeal of tires and the screech of metal. His head shot up, ears twitching, heart pounding. At the far end of the street, a car had swerved and struck a lamppost. Smoke curled from the hood. Inside, voices cried out, one of them painfully familiar. Emily. Max bolted. His paws thundered across the wet road, his body a streak of golden blur. He leapt onto the crumpled car door, clawing at the handle, barking frantically. Inside, Emily's small face pressed against the glass, her lips forming silent cries. The car filled with smoke. Max clawed harder, teeth gnashing against the handle, until finally the door gave way. The gap was small but enough. He shoved his head inside, grabbed Emily's sleeve, and pulled with everything he had. Her body slid free, collapsing onto the road. Coughing, gasping, she clung to his neck. Moments later, her parents stumbled out with help from bystanders. They fell to their knees, clutching Emily, their sobs echoing into the night. And then they saw Max again, soaked, trembling, standing guard like a soldier. This time they didn't just thank him. They took him home. Emily's house was everything Max had lost and more: warmth, food, safety. At first, he didn't dare step inside. His paws lingered at the threshold, eyes wary, tail low. But Emily knelt and whispered, "It's okay, boy. You belong here now." Belong. The word rooted itself deep in his heart. That night, for the first time in months, Max slept on a soft blanket instead of cold pavement. The sound of rain on the roof no longer meant fear. It was just background to his dreams. He dreamed of the alley fights, the storm, the rescues. But most of all, he dreamed of Emily's hand resting on his fur, steady and sure. The forgotten dog had begun his reversal. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was becoming something greater. He didn't know yet how far this road would take him. He didn't know the world would one day call him the millionaire dog. But deep inside, he knew one truth: he would never be useless again. And that truth burned brighter than any hunger. The stone hit him before he even saw it coming. Not a real stone this time, but the memory of it. The sting of humiliation. The laughter of children as he stumbled in the mud. The cold rejection of slammed doors. These echoes lived inside Max, scars deeper than teeth or claws. Even as he lay now on a velvet rug, his belly full and his fur brushed soft, the past whispered, "You don't belong here." But Max was wrong. He was about to prove it, not just to himself, but to the entire city. Weeks passed, and Max became more than just Emily's dog. He became a protector, a symbol. His bravery had spread, whispered first in alleys, then carried into headlines. "Stray dog saves child in car crash" blared across newspapers. Photos showed him standing beside Emily, eyes sharp, posture proud. People began leaving food at the family's gate, children stopped to wave, and strangers called him hero. For Max, it was dizzying. The same streets that once spat him out now seemed to bow when he walked. But with new attention came new tests. One autumn night, while Emily and her family were away at a gathering, thieves broke into their home. They thought it would be easy: an empty house, quiet street, and quick profit. But they had not counted on Max. His ears twitched first, catching the faint scrape of a lock. His body stiffened, tail rising like a banner of warning. When the window creaked open, his growl filled the silence, low and lethal. The thieves froze. Then one laughed. "It's just a dog." But Max wasn't just anything. The first intruder stepped in, flashlight beams slicing the dark. Max lunged, teeth flashing, body a blur of golden fury. He knocked the man flat, jaws snapping inches from his throat. The second intruder swung a crowbar, but Max twisted, dodged, and drove him back with a thunderous bark that rattled the walls. Neighbors woke.
Lights snapped on.
Sirens screamed. By the time police arrived, the thieves were pinned, terrified, trapped not by locks or alarms, but by one determined dog. That night changed everything. Max wasn't only a stray who saved a girl anymore.
He was a guardian.
A protector. A name on every lip. And with fame came something no one expected. Emily's father worked in business. Wealthy, respected, but hardened by a world of deals and numbers. Yet even he softened when Max saved his daughter twice. Gratitude turned into something deeper. Partnership. "He deserves more than scraps," he told his wife. "He deserves recognition." So he gave it. Max was entered into competitions, not for tricks or obedience, but for courage. Awards followed. Sponsors lined up. A brand of dog food stamped his face on its label. Interviews called him the canine millionaire because the money earned in his name grew beyond anything the family imagined. But for Max, fortune was not coins or trophies. It was Emily's laughter when she wrapped her arms around his neck. It was the way neighbors no longer shooed him away, but bent down to stroke his head. It was sleeping each night knowing he had a place, a purpose. Still, the world wasn't done testing him. Winter came fierce and unforgiving. Snow buried streets, and the city staggered under freezing winds. One night, a fire broke out at the orphanage on the hill. Flames clawed at the night sky, smoke thick as thunderclouds. Children screamed inside. People gathered, helpless against the roaring blaze. Firefighters fought, but the flames spread faster than ladders could rise. And then, through the smoke, came Max. He didn't wait for orders. He darted through the broken doorway, heat searing his fur. Inside, the air was a choking storm, with splintering, beams crashing. But his ears caught the faintest cries.
He followed them.
Up the staircase, half-burned, trembling under his paws. Into a room glowing with firelight. There, 3 children huddled in a corner, eyes wide with terror. Max barked, sharp and commanding. The children hesitated, then scrambled toward him. One tripped, coughing, but Max nudged him up, teeth gripping his sleeve, dragging him to his feet. Step by step, he led them through fire and ash, shielding them with his body, guiding them through the collapsing hall. When they burst into the night air, the crowd erupted in cheers and sobs. Firefighters rushed forward, scooping the children into blankets. Max staggered, chest heaving, singed. But his eyes burned brighter than the flames he had walked through. That night, the world crowned him not just a hero, not just a millionaire, but a legend. Weeks later, Max sat on the balcony of Emily's home. Snow glittered under moonlight. The city stretched below, alive and humming. Emily leaned against him, her small hand tangled in his fur. "You're the bravest dog in the world," she whispered. Max didn't understand the words. But he understood the tone, the heartbeat against his side, the warmth of belonging. He lifted his head, ears twitching as the wind carried the city's sounds, distant laughter, car horns, the rhythm of life. Once, those sounds had meant loneliness, rejection, hunger. Now they meant something else.
Home.
The forgotten dog was forgotten no longer. He had been beaten, mocked, starved, cast aside. But he had risen, fought, and proved that worth isn't given, it's earned. From cold pavements to velvet rugs. From slammed doors to open arms. From nameless stray to millionaire hero. Max's fortune wasn't gold or fame. It was love, respect, and the truth that even the most broken can become something unbreakable. And as the city slept, Max kept watch, proud and unafraid, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Because once he had been nothing, now he was everything.